LeBron James and Redick have a new podcast. What's it about? Find out on this episode of Best in the Game. Let's get into it. Welcome to Best in the Game podcast. My name is Mike Jones, aka Jersey Mike. Mind the Game is a new podcast from the minds of LeBron James and former NBA player, now NBA analyst Redick. This podcast goes deep inside the X's and O's of basketball from two of the most brilliant minds the game has ever seen. They touch on a lot of topics, and to tell you what, guys, it's a really great podcast, really great show. The podcast is offered on audio and video via YouTube, but I highly suggest that people interested in this material watch the podcast on YouTube because there's a lot of visual things that you will kind of need to kind of read and understand as to what it is that they're saying. I watched episode 1 called Making a Great Basketball Player, and LeBron James and Redick, they have a great chemistry. You can tell that these two guys really love and appreciate the game. They appreciate not just the art of the game, but also the intellect that goes into playing 4 quarters of basketball. They highlighted some of their favorite players to watch and some of the guys they think are most impactful to the game, including Steph Curry and Allen Iverson. LeBron James even briefly mentions Pat Mahomes and how his impact on football is very similar to the impact on the game that Steph Curry's had in basketball. There's one part of the show where LeBron and JJ discuss basic basketball IQ, some things that they've been on the court and that they've seen and that they thought that people need to know about. So, for example, there's a part in the show where LeBron James says outright kind of what a lot of people think in regards to basketball. And he's saying, hey, if you're running a play in basketball and it works, why are we going to stop running that play? He makes a great point about that. That kind of alludes to the culture that we're in now, where not just players, but even coaches, they kind of have these egos and they come in and they want to do things a certain way. And it has to be that way or otherwise it's a problem. Well, LeBron's like, well, why are we going to continue to run different plays when we can run this one play or these 2 plays, and these are the plays that are working and we're scoring on every time? Kind of makes sense when you think about it that way. Redick even gets in on that conversation and starts discussing a play that he saw where there was a player who was being guarded by Kawhi Leonard, one of the best defensive players in the game that we have today. And that player went to go set the screen for the ball handler. And they pointed out how that's just not good basketball IQ. Kawhi is a great defensive player. So now you're bringing a good defensive player to the ball. And not just that, Kawhi's now going to switch onto the ball handler, which then kind of stifles the offense and stifles that ball handler's ability to kind of run the offense and run a play. So I really thought that was a great point that he made. Also, what I like about this podcast, besides the deep dive into the X's and O's, is that for so long, players have pushed back on media pundits, and they'll tell people like, "Hey, you don't know the game, you're not out there, you're not playing, so on and so forth." Well, now in today's landscape, where a lot of athletes have a voice on their own platform, we're now seeing an uptick in them sharing their ideas and sharing what it is that they see on the court. And lo and behold, like, there are several people who have been around the game. They've watched the game for a long period of time. They've never played at that level, obviously being in the NBA, but they are sort of reiterating some of the same ideas that these players are saying. So it's kind of a really good contrast because we're going into their minds. We're seeing what it is that they see, and you can kind of take that information and say, hey, well, there are other people who are on TV, who are analysts, who are following the game, carrying the game, reporting on the game, and they have the same idea or they saw the same play that you saw. It's interesting because now we in the age where we get to these press conferences and some of the players, they want to attack people. And I get it. They're in the moment. They're athletes. They're emotional. Sometimes they might have just came off a real high because of an amazing play. Sometimes it's a real low because they might have lost like a devastating game. So I absolutely get and understand. But at the same time, we're now able to see what's on their mind, take that information and say, hey, how many other people see this? This is what you should be watching. Look out for this. So I really think it's a good contrast in that way. I am really excited for this podcast. Again, it is on audio and it's on video as well too. But I really think you are doing yourself a disservice if you're not watching this podcast on video. Because again, they're taking film, they're taking clips from NBA games, and they are discussing the details in regards to how NBA players think, move, and make their way and how to get better in the game. I think it's a really great podcast. I can't wait to see episode 2, and I definitely recommend that people check this one out.